Shortland station and ended with a frenzied knife attack in front of horrified passengers. I'll have the details from an eyewitness who was on board.
Gender critical and sacked. A teacher who lost his job for what he said was his refusal to use a student's preferred pronoun has had his unfair dismissal claim rejected. He joins us live and exclusively next.
And Labour's plans for levelling up. Sir Keir Starmer will set out his vision to build a better Britain. This morning we'll bring you that live.
And from April the 6th, people will have the legal rights to make a statutory flexible working request from home for the first day of employment. Do we need to scrap working from home and just get back to the office? We're going to debate that very shortly.
Plus, Blackpool Council have overnight, a few weeks ago, overnight, the zebra crossings became LBGT colours.
Someone said there's a law against that zebra crossings should be black and white by law, but clearly not, because they've painted these multicoloured.
Yeah, and the idea is because they can be really difficult if you're visually impaired and you walk with a dog, for instance. Seeing the black and white image is important. So we're going to be talking to an investigative journalist who basically dived right into this subject and contacted Blackpool Council to find out how much it costs. We'll be bringing you that as well. Let us know your thoughts this morning. GBViews at gbnews.com. First, though, the very latest news with Aaron Armstrong.
A very good morning to you. It's 9:32. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. As you've just been hearing, police are searching for a suspect after stabbing on a London train yesterday afternoon. And a warning, if you're watching on television, there are some distressing images. A graphic footage shared on social media shows a masked man attacking another man on the floor with a large knife, while concerned passengers call for an ambulance. It happened just before 4 p.m. Between Shortlands and Beckenham Junction on a train bound for Victoria Station. The victim has been taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries and a manhunt is underway. Last year's recession was less severe than first thought. That's according to revised figures. The Office for National Statistics found the economy still shrunk for 2 quarters in a row, but the total contraction over that 6-month period dropped from 0.5% to 0.1%. Responding to the figures, the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt says the government's plan is working.
Despite the Bank of England predicting the longest recession in 100 years, in fact, GDP grew, albeit marginally, last year. That's obviously very welcome, but one of the ways that we're going to help that growth is by supporting families get back into work with a big childcare offer. And what will be a hammer blow to those families is that just this week, Labour have said that they may refuse to guarantee that free childcare for every child over 9 months. That will be a huge disappointment to many families.
Thames Water shareholders are refusing to inject extra funding to keep it afloat unless the regulator allows bills to rise. The shareholders were due to invest £500 million before the end of the month, but they've withheld it because they say the business plan is uninvestable. It's understood shareholders wanted Ofwat to allow a 40% bill hike over 5 years for customers and leniency on penalties for breaking regulations. Drivers are being warned to expect long delays as millions set off on their Easter getaway trips. The RAC's warned that journeys on popular routes could take twice as long as the bank holiday weekend coincides with the beginning of the Easter holidays. It's predicted around 14 million journeys are expected to be made, with many this afternoon seeing some of the worst congestion. Well, you can get the latest on all of our stories by scanning the QR code, which you can find on our later programmes. And indeed, you can get the details on our website, gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Ben and Bev.
Good morning. Welcome to Britain's Newsroom on GB News this morning with me, Bev Turner, and Ben Leo in for Andrew Pearce.
Now, a manhunt is underway after a man armed with a zombie blade attacked another man on a train in broad daylight in front of other passengers.
If you're watching on the TV, a warning that the images we're about to show are distressing. We've chosen to modify them a little bit for your sake, in fact.
Yeah, so the images circulating on social media show a man wearing a face mask and wielding a large blade. Police stopped the train and paramedics attended the scene, but the suspect got away.
So the victim has been taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries. It's another shocking example of lawless Britain. Knife crime rose in London alone by 22% last year.
Our reporter Ray Addison is live now in Bromley. Good morning, Ray. Thanks for joining us. What's the latest? Any closer to finding this, I was about to call him a gentleman, but clearly not, this man?
Well, the manhunt is still underway, and police saying they're increasing their presence at this station and others in the area. But commuters here at Shortlands telling me that they've been deeply disturbed by this, and all too frequent now are instances of violence that they witness on the railway network. We know that the police were informed of this incident just before 4 o'clock yesterday, and the footage then posted on social media, this shocking footage of this man standing over another, the victim. He's repeatedly stabbing and slashing at him with that large knife, and of course members of the public clearly disturbed in the carriage and calling emergency services. I spoke to one person who was in the next carriage on that train. They wanted their identity to be hidden because they're on this train line every day, they say. They asked us to call her Sophie. This is what she had to tell us. Tell me about yesterday's events.
I was on the train with my daughter and it was really, really scary, and I'm actually horrified that something like this can happen in our lovely Shortlands and Bromley, and I can't believe it. I actually cannot believe it. And it's a shame that young people can actually do this to each other. Well, I'm guessing that they're young because, you know, there was lots of youngsters around. So I was in the next carriage. I was walking through to find out what was happening, and obviously at the time I didn't realise, and it's only afterwards that I realised, and we all had to get off at Beckenham Junction.
What could you hear?
I heard a lot of shouting, screaming, panic, people on phones, and there was a lot of people that ran off the train, but obviously I don't know if that's anything to do with what had actually happened or people just running because they're scared, and that's it.
When the train stopped at Beckenham Junction, what happened? Can you describe the events that followed?
Well, it was panic. Everyone was in panic. I thought someone had a heart attack. And there was people on phones, as I say. People ran through Beckenham Junction, through the doors, and there was a major panic. And then we realised that the train has come to a halt.
In terms of violence like this, we've been speaking to people here and they're saying that instances of violence on British transport are increasing. Is that something that you recognise?
It is, and it's really upsetting. And I do have a son myself, so I actually don't want him to move and do anything because it just worries me.
Well, British Transport Police say that the victim remains in hospital with serious injuries. His family has been informed, and of course this manhunt very much underway.
OK, thank you, Ray. We will, of course, keep everybody at home posted on that story. If you hear anything, I've no doubt that Ray will let us know.
Just such appalling footage. I saw it yesterday online. Absolutely appalling. And the total disregard for life. You know, it's just
brutal.
What is going on?
Absolutely brutal. And I think it raises the issue very much of security on public transport as well. I want to see security guards on every single train and bus. If we're being encouraged to get out of our cars, this is the risk you run. Would
you have got involved in that? Would you have tried to stop it?
No, I don't think I would, actually.
Should men? If I was on that train, would you have expected me to get involved in stuff?
I was watching it, and that was exactly what was going through my mind, is would I have got involved, or would I have wanted to? If it was my son on the floor being stabbed like that, then absolutely you would want somebody to get involved. But there were about 3 or 4 men, as we could see, just sat on the seats, actually not getting involved. But the knife was like this. Yeah. It's like a machete. I don't know how you could overpower somebody with that.
I've always said in situations like that, I'd like to think I would get involved and stop it. But also, you've got to weigh up the risk-reward. You need a certain, at least 2 or 3 other people to help you, because if it goes wrong, you're getting knifed as well. So it all depends, and it's easy to talk, you know, when you're not in the heat of the moment.
It does. gbviews@gbnews.com is the email address. Let us know your reaction to that story.
Right, now, this is going to be interesting. A teacher who lost his job for what he said was his refusal to use a student's preferred pronouns has had his unfair dismissal claim rejected.
So, you may remember this. Kevin Lister taught maths for 18 years at New College, Swindon, but he was then sacked for gross misconduct.
In the lead-up to the hearing, he said it was, quote, not the role of a teacher to confirm the gender transition of a student. But Carol Kitching, who was the school's head at the time, said he wasn't dismissed for his beliefs, but rather for the way he, quote, harassed and treated the student.
Well, we are delighted to say that Kevin Lister joins us exclusively now after this result yesterday. Good morning, Kevin. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Just initially, your reflections, please, on the tribunal yesterday.
I am devastated. I just don't know what to say. The statement that Carol Kitching has just said, that it was the way that I harassed and discriminated against student A, is nonsense. And I'd like to think I demonstrated that in the hearing. There was one conversation I had with student A, that was at the end of a class when she was considering entering a girls' maths competition, and I was encouraging her to do the competition. She got very emotional. I said, "Is it your decision to transition that's upsetting you?" "Yes," she said. And I explained to her the risks associated with it as best as I possibly could. Then she went away and said she'd think about it. And then she entered the girls' competition. So I thought, well, she had thought about it. Maybe she concluded that she was a girl after all and didn't need to be a boy. And nothing much then happened. And then in January, so this first conversation with student A was in September. Then in January, her friend, student B, stays behind after class and demands and instructs me that I need to refer to student A as a male. And then I tried to explain to her, why I thought that was a bad idea, and why she should maybe try and help and be a friend and with a critical friend rather than just a kind friend, to be a critical friend. And I tried to give a reason why I thought it was the idea of transitioning is a bad idea. And that's the only two conversations I had. The conversation I had with student B, that 5-minute conversation at the end of the class where she instructed me how to behave, and basically the only instruction I had to use incorrect pronouns was from student B. That was the sole thing that was used to support the claim of discrimination and harassment.
So, Kevin, apparently you wrote the students what they call their dead name, their previous gendered name, on a whiteboard, and that was one of the pivotal moments that I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, that you lost the tribunal.
Yeah, that's right. And so, I'm trying to encourage the girls in the class to enter this maths competition, and I write the girls' names down. And to be quite frank, it was about a week and a half after she'd asked. I mean,
did you know you were writing the previous name, or were you doing it deliberately to make a point?
I didn't do it deliberately to make a point. It's just I'm writing girls' names to go up in a girls' maths competition. I'd raised a safeguarding concern, and I'd asked, did we have parental consent before we supported this social transition? The only response I got from safeguarding is the college policy is not to tell the parents.
So you're just to be clear, when a teacher raises a safeguarding concern, it can be that there's concerns about the home life of that child, maybe that they're at risk somehow. Your concern in that situation was that the parents might be being kept in the dark about this pupil's decision.
Correct. Yeah. And I didn't want to go and support that social transition. The safeguarding asked 3 things. It asked, was there parental consent? Was she making an informed decision? And was she at risk of self-medicating with cross-sex hormones, which are easily available online now? And so the college response was, our policy is not to tell parents. They couldn't answer question 2, couldn't answer question 3. They gave me no guidance at all, 0. So I was basically supposed to go into the class and make up my own rules as to what I was supposed to do.
Kevin, you taught there for 18 years at New College in Swindon. Could you think of any other... Sorry,
just to correct that, so I've been at New College Swindon for just over a year at that point. I taught previously. So I've been teaching maths for 18 years. So I was relatively new to New College Swindon. And I wasn't at all aware of this completely trans-affirmative culture and policy that was, they were way more extreme than ever I had expected.
Could you think of any other instances in which you might raise a concern about a child and the discussion is that you don't tell the parents?
I can't. No.
See, that's the bit...
In the safeguarding policy of the college, one of the things was to engage with the parents. It's just beyond me that we can have something like that. The other thing that I said as well in the safeguarding concern was, in light of the Keira Bell case, then we need to be very careful. And in the Keira Bell case, one of the things that it said was that the transitioning is basically experimental medication. There is no evidence and science behind it at all. And that was one of the things that I brought out in the hearing, that it is a non-evidence-based ideological precedent which has caused and can cause serious harm.
What does this mean for you now, Kevin? Where are you left professionally, personally, emotionally?
So the college referred me to the DBS, and the DBS put me on the children's barred list. So I can't teach again ever in the rest of my life. I can't drive a van for Tesco's. But one of the things that I did was to get my van driving qualification. But then a lot of the delivery companies actually require DBS clearance. So there's nothing I can do.
We're slightly running out of time, but wouldn't it? I'm just thinking now. Do you regret this? Would it have just been easier to say, yeah, whatever? I don't mind if you want to be a boy, a girl, or a cat. I'll go with it.
No, don't regret this at all. I would do the same thing. I would put safeguarding first. What has happened is we have allowed the Equality Act and any ideology to completely usurp our obligations to safeguarding and to ensure safe spaces for children. The whole thing has now become become upside down.
OK, Kevin, thank you so much for your time this morning. We wish you all the best. Kevin Lister there, the teacher who has lost his
Thanks,
job.
Kevin. New College Swindon said in a statement, "We are pleased to confirm that the complaints of unfair dismissal and discrimination on the grounds of religion or belief have been dismissed. This is a sensitive issue and individuals are entitled to their personal beliefs. A thorough investigation resulted in Mr Lister being dismissed for actions that were deemed discriminatory, causing significant upset and potential harm to a student, amounting to gross misconduct, and not simply for holding gender-critical beliefs." It is a big concern, especially for parents whose kids are starting school imminently, maybe this year or next. What is going to happen in a couple of years when your children potentially come home from class, you think they're learning a decent education, and they say, "Mum, Dad, I want to change gender." What do you do?
No doubt you will have some opinions on that. Let us know. Don't go anywhere. A debate about working from home next. This is GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Is the brand of toothpaste super important here, or is it more about the toothbrush? Because I was told a long time ago by my dentist, electric toothbrush, Pip, that is the way to go.
You're exactly right. I mean, the action of mechanically removing plaque, so using a brush, is much more effective than the brand of toothpaste itself. But in terms of the ingredient in toothpaste that we're looking for, it's something called fluoride. And fluoride is essential to help remineralize and strengthen our teeth. It's really important to use a toothpaste with fluoride. And in terms of brushing, using an electric toothbrush is just much easier. You know, you're brushing your teeth first thing in the morning, last thing at night. You're going to be a bit tired in those times. So using an electric toothbrush, you just hold it against your tooth and gum and it does all the work for you. So it's just much easier in my opinion.
But you have to use your electric toothbrush properly.
You're exactly right. Yeah, there is a technique of actually brushing your teeth, although it sounds really simple. With an electric toothbrush, you have to hold it against the tooth and the gum. Ideally, you want a pressure sensor in that toothbrush so you know exactly when you're pressing too hard. But if you're using a manual toothbrush, you need to move it around and small circular motions. But actually what I see is people who use manual toothbrushes, they tend to over scrub and over brush, which can actually lead to gum recession and your enamel thinning long term.
Sometimes I will get up in the morning and I will have breakfast and then I'll brush my teeth. Is that wrong?
Unfortunately, that's wrong. So the best time to brush your teeth is first thing in the morning, as soon as you wake up. If you're brushing after you eat and after breakfast, you're brushing your teeth in that weakened acidic state. So your teeth are actually under attack and they're much more vulnerable.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Did you know that on April the 6th, a new law will come into force making it easier for workers to request flexible hours?
Yes, currently staff need to have worked for their employer for 26 weeks to ask to work from home, but under the new rules, they'll have the right to ask for it on their first day of employment. So is it time, once and for all, to scrap working from home? Joining us now is former Apprentice star Ryan Mark Parsons and broadcast journalist Judita De Silva. Good morning to you both. Mark, come on then. Work from home on the first day, what's that about?
Well, I think the whole thing is ridiculous. I can speak for a lot of people my age. I'm 23, and I think it really stifles your professional development if you're not going into the office. And I looked at examples in the financial sector, for example, Goldman Sachs, which are requiring all of their staff now to go into work 5 days a week. And even with JP Morgan, for example, as well. 2,000 of their managing directors have to go in to the office full time to train the junior staff. And I welcome these changes. The CEO of Goldman Sachs actually said working from home is an aberration. And I completely and utterly agree. I think the more people that go into the office, the better. I think it's great for your professional development. I think it's great for socializing outside of work and even inside of work, getting to see people face to face. I think that's what business and networking is all about, instead of doing it two-dimensionally behind a computer screen, which I think is utterly ridiculous, quite frankly. So that's what I think.
Thank you, Mark. Judita, let me bring you in. This is the kind of thing that actually working mothers particularly were trying to campaign for decades. I would say it might be one of the best things that came out of lockdowns.
Indeed, I think it's actually perfect that you've got both of us talking about this, because he's mentioned that he's in his 20s and he's male. I'm not, and I'm female, and it makes sense that when you're younger and you don't have the same kinds of responsibilities that women have to carry, I completely agree. I would love to be in the office, get the working environment, forge relationships. But when you get to my big age and you have other things to contend with, working from home, it gives you the flexibility you need, where I can keep working, or you can deal with the responsibilities of family and the constantly moving pieces you are constantly juggling. No one is saying you work less. You work in a more efficient way that enables you to deal with all the things that would normally require you to ask for time off work. Could I not come in today? But no, I'm still working, but I might be working from my car. I'm on the phone while picking up a kid. I'm at the doctor's office while on my laptop. That is why it makes it more functional, that you are now starting to accommodate the different facets of life that different people have to contend with.
Sorry to interrupt you, Ryan, this basically means that you blokes don't understand how much we women can actually achieve whilst we're looking after elderly relatives, looking after the children, dealing with all that, and we still manage to do all the work we need to do. It's just that you're not as good as us.
Yeah. Well, of course. I mean, look, listen, I think that's a really patronising argument. Of course, men understand the responsibilities of women, but what I would say to working women is to find a solution to dealing with your children that you're looking after. And you can, I have friends that have children and they work and they manage to find childcare solutions. That's what I would say to that. And the idea of working from a doctor's office with a laptop. What are these distractions you're talking about?
Sorry to interrupt. We're going to have to cut you short. A fascinating debate.
Oh, I want to carry this on another day, guys. We barely scratched the surface there. Thank you both so much for your time. It's been a very rapid first half hour. Don't go anywhere. Here's the weather with Greg Dewhurst. That was really...
a brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Low pressure dominates the weather for the day ahead. Heavy showers, strong winds across the country. Met Office warnings in force for the strong winds across the southwest of the UK today. 60 to 70 miles an hour around the coasts. Possible some heavy rain across Northern Ireland. Continued risk of flooding here. There's some brighter breaks in between, but for many it will be a showery day. The rain heavy with some hail and thunder in there. Gusty winds too, making it feel quite chilly. So temperatures generally in the range of 9 to 12 Celsius. Add on that brisk wind. Will be a chilly afternoon for many of us. That low pressure continues to swirl its way northeastwards as we go through into the evening time. Some hefty downpours possible. Some clearer spells starting to develop into the early hours, but further showers also pushing in. Under the clearest skies, we could see temperatures dip to mid to low single figures, but for most it will be a frost-free start to Friday morning. Showers from the word go across many parts of the country. Some more persistent rain still across northern Scotland, perhaps some hill snow for a time too. And then through the day, sunny spells and showers is the name of the game. Some of the showers will be heavy with hail and thunder once more. The good news is the winds will be a little lighter compared to Thursday, but with the brisk showers around, it will still feel quite chilly. Temperatures up to around 13 or 14 Celsius. See you soon.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Manchester Metrolink services aren't running between Victoria and Exchange Square because of emergency engineering works, with some trains running to Market Street. Train services between Manchester Piccadilly and Sheffield are diverting via Stockport because of a track fault, with buses running between Chinley and New Mills Central. On the M1 in Derbyshire, the inside lane's closed northbound where a lorry caught fire between junctions 29 and 29A from the Chesterfield and Mansfield turn to Markham Vale, causing delays. On the M6 in Staffordshire, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed southbound. Someone's broken down between junctions 11 and 10 from Cannock to the Walsall and Wolverhampton turn, with queues towards there. On the M6 in the West Midlands, 2 lanes are closed northbound at junction 5 near Birmingham after an accident causing queues, and hover travel services to and from the Isle of Wight are suspended between Ryde and Southsea because of poor weather conditions. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Want to be a winner just like Phil?
Obviously, whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
Enter our massive spring giveaway. There's £12,345 in tax-free cash to give your finances a spring boost. We'll also send you on a shopping spree with £500 worth of vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. You'll also get a garden gadget package. You have to hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats, and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
10 a.m. on Thursday the 28th of March. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Bev Turner, and Ben Leo standing in today for Andrew Pearce.
Good morning to you. Manhunt underway. A man is in a life-threatening condition after being stabbed on a train in London in broad daylight. Ray Addison has the latest.
Police say the incident started here with two men fighting at Shortland Station and ended with a frenzied knife attack in front of horrified passengers. I'll have details from a passenger who was on board that train.
So King Charles is going to be giving us his Morn Day message today. He's going to thank those who extend the hand of friendship in times of need in his Easter message.
And the teacher who was sacked for refusing to abide by a pupil's gender pronouns, Kevin Lister, exclusively spoke to Britain's Newsroom this morning after losing a tribunal that accused him, and where he was found guilty of, humiliating a pupil. Here's what he said earlier.
I am devastated. I just don't know what to say. The statement that Carol Kitching has just said, that it was the way that I harassed and discriminated against student A, is nonsense.
Let us know your thoughts on all the discussion points this morning, GB Views at gbnews.com. We're also going to be letting you know what the traffic might be like on this bank holiday.
It's also meant to be a washout, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, don't tell me that.
There was a stat saying that the last 18 months have been the wettest on record in England, and I put a tweet out this morning saying, so much for global boiling, but that has sparked all sorts of angry responses from the you-know-who brigade.
Very mischievous, Ben. That and a lot more this morning. First, though, your very latest news with Aaron Armstrong.
And a very good morning to you. It's 2 minutes past 10. I'm Aaron Armstrong. Well, as you've just been hearing, police are searching for a suspect after a stabbing on a London train yesterday afternoon. A warning, if you're watching on TV, there are some distressing images to follow. A graphic footage shared on social media shows a masked man attacking another man with a large knife, while concerned passengers can be heard calling for help. It happened just before 4 p.m. between Shortlands and Beckenham Junction on a train bound for Victoria Station. The victim's been taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries, and a manhunt is underway. An eyewitness told GB News reporter Ray Addison the attack took place in front of children.
I was on the train with my daughter and it was really, really scary, and I'm actually horrified that something like this can happen in our lovely Shortlands and Bromley, and I can't believe it. I actually cannot believe it. And it's a shame that young people can actually do this to each other. I was in the next carriage. I was walking through to find out what was happening, and obviously at the time I didn't realise, and it's only afterwards that I realised, and we all had to get off at Beckenham Junction.
Well, former Met Police Detective Peter Blexley says this sort of behaviour has become the norm for emergency services.
It's a terrifying experience for anybody who's unfortunate enough to be on that train, I'm sure. But of course, not out of the ordinary for the 999 responders, the paramedics and the police who will have attended this dreadful incident, because this is the kind of thing they witness and see the results of only too often, I'm afraid, in Great Britain in 2024.
Last year's recession was less severe than first thought, according to revised figures. The Office for National Statistics found the economy still shrunk for 2 quarters in a row, but the total contraction over that 6-month period dropped from 0.5% to 0.1%. Responding to the figures, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, says the government's plan is working.
Despite the Bank of England predicting the longest recession in 100 years, in fact, GDP grew, albeit marginally, last year. That's obviously very welcome, but one of the ways that we're going to help that growth is by supporting families get back into work with a big childcare offer. And what will be a hammer blow to those families is that just this week, Labour have said that they may refuse to guarantee that free childcare for every child over 9 months. That will be a huge disappointment to many families.
Meanwhile, the Chancellor says he believes Thames Water is solvent despite shareholders withholding extra cash to keep it afloat. Shareholders were due to invest £500 million before the end of the month, but they've withheld it because they say the business plan's uninvestable. They want the regulator Ofwat to increase customer bills by up to 40% over 5 years. It comes after damaging data on the scale of raw sewage being pumped into Britain's waterways was released this week amid dangerous levels of E. coli. Well, we are going to hear now from the Leader of the Opposition, Sir Keir Starmer. Let's tune in for that.
And some advice for all of you if you're thinking of getting in a round with Ange. Don't be tempted by her favourite drink, the Venom cocktail, or you'll live to regret it. Thank you, Richard, for your introduction. We are so excited about the vision you have for the West Midlands. And as Ange said, it's great to be here in Dudley to launch Labour's local election campaign. The path to changing Britain, to national renewal, starts and begins here. And you can take it from me, we're not playing for a draw. We're looking to win in Dudley, looking to win in the West Midlands, right across the country, from Hastings to Hartlepool, a changed Labour Party on the march, on your side, return to the service of working people. But look, I do have to be honest. I was hoping we'd be launching a different election campaign here today. But the Prime Minister bottled it. He wants one last drawn-out summer tour with his beloved helicopter. So we need to send him another message. Show his party once again that their time is up. The dithering must stop. The date must be set. Britain wants change, and it's time for change with Labour. Because the choice at these elections is exactly the same as it will be later this year. Stability with Labour or more chaos with the Tories. Unity or division. Renewal or decline. A changed Labour Party ready to serve the interests of working people, or a Conservative Party that has forgotten how to serve anything other than itself. And we can all see the consequences. Their failure is visible in every community in Britain. The sewage in our rivers, the ambulances that don't come, the schools crumbling over our children's heads, mortgage and rent payments through the roof. And now, on top of this year, your council tax rising, a new Tory stealth tax coming soon to your letterbox, £300 per household, and they hope that you won't notice. In fact, they tell you that they're cutting your taxes, while at the same time they're rifling through your back pocket, give with one hand and take even more with the other. And on and on and on it goes. Say the right thing and do the exact opposite. Say we're all in this together, but decimate your public services. Say there's no downside for business, but rush through a careless Brexit deal. Say this is for ordinary people, but crash the economy to give tax cuts to the richest 1%. A party that is now so desperate, so broken by its failure to address your problems, that it has completely cut itself adrift from the responsibility of service, reduced, with no record to defend, to exploiting Britain's problems for the politics of division. But look, here's the good news. They don't get to choose. You don't have to take it anymore. You can stop them. And that's the beauty of democracy. The power of the vote rests in your hands. And on the 2nd of May, you can reject the chaos. You can reject division, you can reject decline and vote for national renewal with Labour. Because make no mistake, Labour has a plan to get Britain's future back, a plan to drag politics in this country back to service, tilt our economy back towards the interests of working people, get us building again, working again, growing again, by unlocking the pride and potential of communities like Dudley. And that's what we'll be campaigning on during these elections. And look, I know some of you may have heard this kind of thing before. In fact, as Anne said, this is the reason we came to Dudley to launch this campaign. Because, of course, it was right here that the former Prime Minister, well, actually the former Prime Minister, if I'm going to be accurate, gave his big levelling up speech. A project he said would turn the tide on regional inequality in this country and give a fair share to towns like Dudley. And you know, people say to me, the is to prey on people's fear. Yet in some ways, preying on their hopes is just as bad. And that's what the Tories did with levelling up. Of course it struck a chord. Of course, a town like Dudley wanted that hope to be real. Not just the promise of a better future. We all need that. It's also how that project knowingly spoke to what towns like this have lost. The way of life that disappeared when the factories or pits closed. The community, the security, the chest-out pride that grows when you are certain your contribution is respected. That what you do, what you make, matters. And not just for your family, but for your community, your country, and even beyond our shores. A pride that looked out to the world and said, this is our place. This is who we are. Now, it was steel here, but the same is true of shipbuilding in towns like Hartlepool, car manufacturing across the region, mining everywhere from the chalk and clay of Essex to the coal seams of the Midlands and the North. I mean, look at the names of our football clubs. Stoke City, the Potters, Stourbridge just down the road, the Glass Boys, Angie Stockport, the Hatters. Now, that pride is still there. Of course it is. And why not? I think Stockport gunning for promotion. But over the years, it's a pride that's become a little less sure of the ground beneath its feet, in need of a stronger foundation, a government willing to see communities like this not as a charity case or a political client, but as a source of growth and dynamism ready to be unlocked. A partnership where politics offers you service rather than turning its back once it's counted your vote. Now, we understand that in the Labour Party. Trust me. What towns like this have been through over the decades. It's our history, our communities, and, in many cases, the story which has shaped our families. My dad was a toolmaker. He worked in a factory. He always felt, particularly in the 80s, that he was looked down upon, disrespected. But equally, my sister is a care worker now. So I will never accept that it's only the work of the past which deserves our pride and respect. And that was the great lesson of the pandemic. It showed exactly who made up the backbone of Britain. The carers, the couriers, the driving, the teaching assistants, the warehouse workers, the supermarket staff, the nurses and the paramedics. The working people of this country, my Labour Party, stands with you. And that's my biggest frustration with these 14 wasted years. It's not just the stagnation. not just the price working people have paid, it's also the countless missed opportunities to give working people the power to drive our country forward, to bring people together outside of a crisis, unlock that pride people have for their community and harness it to change our country. Now, levelling up is a good ambition for Britain. Taking back control, if it means control for communities, not politicians in Westminster, that is absolutely essential for growth. But moving forward requires not just a new plan, but also a fundamental shift in how we govern. Britain's got an economy that hoards potential and a politics that hoards power. And it's no coincidence, no accident, that this leaves us with more regional inequality than anywhere else in Europe. So if we want to change our economy, we must also change our politics. And both these goals require things we know the Tories will never deliver: economic stability, a commitment to service, a recognition that the sticking plaster approach to investment costs Britain more in the long run, that economic growth is not something that those at the top hand down to the rest of the country, and that a more dangerous world needs a more dynamic government prepared to step in alongside business and communities to deliver the security that working people need. But perhaps most of all, it needs an end to politics that is done to communities, not with them. No more political hero complexes, no more fantasies, no more easy answers that require nobody, politicians or anybody else, to lift a finger. Change comes from us all. I mean that. The Tory era of politics as performance art is coming to an end. But to get Britain out of this hole, we all need to roll up our sleeves. National renewal is a partnership. And I'm not here to tell you everything will be easy. That's what happened 4 years ago. Labour will give you a plan. We'll give you new powers to make a difference in your community. But look around your country. We need you. After everything you've been through in the past 14 years, I know this is a hard request to make. I know how little faith there is in politics to make a difference. But in your heart of hearts, I expect you know that this is what Britain needs right now. And coming together after all the chaos and division behind a credible long-term plan, a plan to back your potential, match your ambition, unlock your pride, so together we get Britain's future back. So here's what voting Labour means this year. The change we offer for your community and our country. The new foundation we lay together that will give your family more security, unlock your community's potential and generate economic growth from the whole country. It's a plan that starts, as it must, with economic stability. I mean, just look at the Tories now. Once again, in desperation, committing to the madness of unfunded tax cuts. £46 billion to abolish national insurance, with no way of funding it other than risky borrowing or cutting your pension and our NHS. They're the only choices, whether they admit it or not. It's like they think Liz Truss never happened. And maybe for their bills, for their mortgage, for their cost of living, it didn't. But out here, beyond the walls of Westminster, working people have paid an enormous price. No, policies have to be paid for. Every pound is precious. And this Labour Party, with Rachel Reeves as Chancellor, will value every pound as if it's yours, because at the end of the day, it is.
That was Sir Keir Starmer launching his election campaign, speaking in the West Midlands. Hopefully you're still with us after that.
What are you suggesting?
Well, he doesn't, for me, I'm afraid he has a kind of voice that is very easy to zone out of. You know, he spent a lot of time there telling us how bad the country is in. For me, wasted words. People are well aware of how difficult things are at the moment. Don't tell us that. Tell us what you're going to actually do. I didn't hear an awful lot of meat on the bones of that. There was a lot of broad brushstrokes, as there often is with Keir Starmer.
Well, isn't that the problem? That's the disillusionment from the electorate, that this is the uni party. The Conservatives and Labour are pretty much the same thing. Net zero, uncontrolled mass migration, gender ideology. Labour, it's argued, would go further on that. High tax, low growth. And he talks about Liz Truss raising mortgages. I'm sorry, Sir Keir, you were wrong. Inflation crippled the entire world. Was Liz Truss in charge in the US when mortgage rates spiked to 7-8%? No, she wasn't.
He's playing with a very straight bat, isn't he? He daren't say anything too controversial at the moment. I think the feeling is we just keep it simple. Talk about nostalgia. It's a very nostalgic speech there. He was talking, wasn't he, about his father being a tool maker.
I haven't heard that before.
In the factory. No, that's a new one on me. But also, if you're going to talk about factories and tool makers, what are you actually going to do about people's jobs in those sorts of industries which are being stolen by AI and the tech revolution? Tell us that. Don't just hark back, because he's not going to rip all that out and go back to the good old days when a man did a good day's work with his hands. That's not what he's suggesting. But he's not telling us what he's actually going to do.
One of the only things from that did inspire me was him talking about the pollution in our waterways and rivers, because living by the seaside in Sussex, the amount of times Southern Water, and I'm going to call you out again, the way they behave is absolutely vile. Every other week pumping raw sewage into the sea where me and my kids can't go swimming. So if they're going to sort that out, then maybe that's a good thing. But as for everything else, party.
The water company are not here to defend themselves, of course.
I wish they were.
We had a big debate on this yesterday. 4 million hours of raw sewage pumped into our seas and rivers last year.
And there was a story doing the rounds today. Did you see that there was massive amounts of E. coli in the River Thames for the boat race? When's the boat race?
This weekend.
So, good luck if you're dipping your toes into that water down there.
Right, up next, we're going to have your reaction to the interview we did at the top of the show with this former teacher, Kevin Lister, who was sacked because he wouldn't call a pupil by the pronouns that they preferred. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
The Guardian's not happy, everybody, because one of their headline stories today was about a private members club that is for gentlemen only, the Garrick Club I refer to in London. There's accusations now, Quinton, that it's all the kind of upper echelons of society, all the powerful...
It's a cabal of important, powerful people who are running the country.
And I thought to myself, when I heard descriptions like that, I bet Quinton Letts is somehow involved. Are you?
I've been to the Garrick a few times.
Why can't women be members?
Because it's a gents' club. My daughter, one of my daughters, is a member of an all-women's club called the University Women's Club, and they don't allow blokes in. It's an outrage. No, it's not. It's a free country.
I mean, it's archaic and it needs to change.
What is?
You know, is my view. The fact that the Garrick doesn't admit women members. There are lots of these members clubs, across London, probably in other parts of the country as well, and you have to pay for membership, so it is well-to-do members of society that go. I've nothing against them existing, but all of them have changed their constitution. Those that were once men only, they all now admit women. The only exception now is the Garrick. My other thought is, well, why are we talking about it if we've got nothing more important going on?
Just to be frank, I genuinely could not care less if there is a club that I'm not allowed into because of my sex. I do, though, think that if you're going to start...
You're allowed in, though. They let them in.
Yeah, but not as members.
Yeah.
But I do think if you're going to start, having all of this kind of respect and all the rest of it for single-sex spaces for men, then you can't, as a society, allow the ridiculousness that goes on in female spaces when a man sticks a dress on and a wig maybe and a bit of lipstick if he's feeling bold and says that he's called Sharon and then wants to be allowed into that space, and then those establishments then buckle and let those men actually into things like changing rooms of women. That really, really annoys me.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Good morning to you. It's 10:25. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Ben Leo, in for Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
We're going to go back to the West Midlands now. Labour are launching their local election campaign. Here they are.
We will get the country's future back. But your destination, your decisions, the pride that defines who you are, that belongs to you. And there is a power in that, a power which I believe can change this country. Let me put it this way. At some point in your life, many people here will have heard a doubting voice inside saying, no, this isn't for you. You don't belong here. You can't do that.
Is Aaron needed on news at past?
Working class people certainly hear that voice. Trust me. And in a strange way, perhaps it's that kind of insecurity industrial communities feel when they look to the future. But imagine if instead a whole country said, you do belong. Imagine if a whole country said, we back your potential. Imagine if a whole country commits properly to unlocking the pride you have for your community. Then look what we could build. A Britain where every contribution is equally respected. Where you don't have to change who you are just to get on. Where whatever your background, you can feel certain that your effort will be rewarded. The future will be better for your children. A Britain strong enough for you to invest your hope, your potential, your pride. A country we can build together. That is the change we offer. That is Britain's future. To get it back, vote Labour on the 2nd of May. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Fantastic to see you all. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Right. I'm now going to take a number of questions from the press, and I've got a list here. I'm going to start with Mark from the Express and Star. Do we have Mark? Mark, can I just say before you start, our condolences. Pete Madeley, one of your journalists, passed away. Last time I saw you, he was very ill. Please pass our condolences to his family and to all of your staff. It must be a very, very difficult time for everybody at the Express and Star.
Yeah. Well, dear, thank you very much. That's much appreciated. 35 years ago, this was a bustling, thriving town, 3 big department stores, you could buy anything. Since then, under both Labour and Conservative governments, it's been a best managed decline. It's suffered more than most towns have in this country. At the moment, the government has proposed levelling up plans for an Eton College building and for the university, an Eton College at a sixth form, to give children from deprived backgrounds a chance to get Eton education, and demolish the Hippodrome Theatre to build a university campus. My questions are, can Dudley become the thriving town it was in the 1970s, 1980s? And what are your thoughts on these regeneration proposals that the present government is putting forward? Are they enough, and what would Labour do differently?
The answer to the question is yes, it can become a thriving town and place again, and I'm determined that it will. And the phrase you used then, managed decline, is the phrase that should eat away at all of us, because that is the feeling in too many places across the country. But for that to happen, we need a viable plan, and we need to do the hard yards. And as Angela said, levelling up is not a slogan. It's got to be a viable plan and the hard yards of a plan that will actually work across the country. The number one mission of an incoming Labour government will be to grow the economy. But not just to grow the economy, which is vital, but to grow it in every place across the country. Not to have it grown in some parts of the country and redistribution to be the one-word answer for other places. So we will work to rebuild Dudley and all the other places and cities across the country with the hard yards and the viable plan that we put forward this morning. Thank you, Mark, very much. I've got Lewis from ITV Central.
Hello,
Lewis.
So, first of all, I mean, some voters across towns like Dudley, right across the Midlands, are still really unsure about whether Labour really does have their best interests at heart. There's still a bit of convincing to do there, I think. What can you say today that will convince people that you do have their best interests at heart? And given the fact that we are here in Dudley today, I wonder too, what does the Black Country mean to you?
Well, look, I mean, this is such a good question, because one of the most important things in politics is being clear that you get it, you understand how people feel about themselves, their family, their community, their place. And across the Black Country, it is important that we feel it, we understand it, that emotion that comes with place. And we talk about managed decline, but alongside that's a huge pride. Everywhere I go in the Black Country, there's an amazing pride people have in their place, their high street. It means something to them. In many ways, I feel they're screaming out for a government that simply matches their ambition and comes up alongside it. So in terms of the emotional connection, I completely understand. The answer then is, well, if you do understand how we feel, what we want, the ambition that we have, and you're prepared to come up alongside us, have you got a viable plan to do it? And that's why the local growth plan is so important, because that is local, it's based in place, it's about people with skin in the game, playing their full part, but alongside a national strategy that works. That is hard yards. And my frustration of the past 14 years, but particularly since 2019, is that in saying levelling up, the government was tapping into something real that people yearned for, but they didn't have a viable plan and they didn't do the hard yards. That's unforgivable. And we intend to turn that around and make sure that we can make that connection real and change places across the Black Country. Thank you for your question. I'll go, please, to Beth.
OK, so there we go. So Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, launching his party's local election campaign in the West Midlands, saying that Rishi Sunak bottled it on calling a general election, said that Boris Johnson got it right on levelling up, taking a barb at Rishi Sunak for not doing enough to follow in his footsteps, and saying that the Tories' rule over the last 14 years were completely wasted. Does that inspire you, Beverly Turner?
Well, I thought you were going to ask our audience then, Ben. Does it inspire me? Not particularly. I can't lie. I still don't know enough of what the vision is. What he's talking about, as I said, is a historical vision. How great Britain was in the 1950s and 60s is all I heard, but we're not going back there. So what does that vision look like? What is his ideology? What are his values? Where does he stand on the march of technology? This is the things that are going to affect people's lives, and I don't hear any concrete policy ideas there.
Also, crucially, lots of you in the inbox saying that there's no mention at all of migration, which Arguably, when it comes to the pressures on the NHS, our housing is one of the main catalysts for the issues we've got at the moment. Colin says on email, good morning, Colin. Starmer has just said that his father was a toolmaker. Well, he certainly did an excellent job. And John says, so everyone's saying how Labour will win the next election. How long can we expect it to be before they fix the NHS and the boats crossing the Channel, do you think?
And Daniel has said to vote for this man is to open Pandora's box. He doesn't do anything but talk. Well, Daniel, he would say, I can't do anything yet. Once I'm in number 10, then watch the kind of things that I will do. Wendy says Starmer harps on and on about the last 14 years of Conservative government, but he doesn't say that Labour bankrupted the country, leaving a note saying that there's no money in the pot. What a load of flannel reform all the way for me. Right. Keep your messages coming in, gbviews@gbnews.com. Still to come this morning, the zebra crossing scandal in Blackpool. That's right, we'll tell you all about it in just a moment. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In County Durham, the A19 is partly blocked southbound by an accident between the Merton interchange and Easington, causing queues. Manchester Metrolink services aren't running between Victoria and Exchange Square because of emergency engineering works, with some trams running to Market Street. Trains between Manchester Piccadilly and Sheffield are diverting via Stockport because of a track fault, with buses running between Chinley and New Mills Central. On the M1 in Derbyshire, the inside lane's closed northbound, where a lorry caught fire between junctions 29 and 29A from the Chesterfield and Mansfield turn to Markham Vale, causing delays. On the M6 in the West Midlands, there's a lane closed northbound to junction 5 near Birmingham because of an accident, a diesel spill, but accused from junction 4. And on the M42 in the West Midlands, there's a lane closed northbound after an accident between junctions 5 and 6, causing delays. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
You think this country needs new gas power stations? Apparently, this will all be about trying to get some form of energy security. Rishi Sunak has upset people today with this suggestion, people saying that actually this would do more damage to climate change than it would do good. Where are you on it, Richard?
I'll tell you exactly where. We need a lot more gas power stations and nuclear power stations because quite often the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. Last week, we imported 16% of all our electricity because we haven't got enough capacity in the UK, and we're now totally over-reliant on renewables.
The part of the problem is the lack of storage capacity, which the government has finally got round to addressing. I think this as backup is actually quite a sensible idea. But they are not doing anything, as far as I can tell. At the moment, it will be retrofitted to have storage capability, which seems to be utterly bonkers. I mean, anyone who's got solar panels, you know very well you're storing up energy. So it's about storage as much as production. They could have gone, 20 years ago, we could have had nuclear power. We could have done more. We haven't looked far enough ahead in the future, and we are in grave danger of making the same mistake. I mean, the other side of this is, what is the difference going to be? Blackouts are, they're irritating and...
Irritating? It'd be disastrous. It would destroy our economy.
Well, they would be now, but, some of us remember 3-day weeks and things like that. And in fact, I grew up thinking that everybody had, at least a couple of days a week when they had to eat off a primus stove and things.
This is, again, I don't want to harp on, but this is one of the problems in the politics in our country, isn't it? So many politicians, they just think in election cycles. Absolutely. They just think, what can I do and say to get my own backside re-elected at the next general election? They're not always looking ahead at, actually, politics aside, what is genuinely the best thing for this country?
Very good morning, 10:38. So a manhunt is underway after a man armed with a zombie blade attacked another man on a train in broad daylight yesterday in front of passengers.
Yeah, you've probably seen the horrendous footage online, but video circulating on social media shows a man wearing a face mask and wielding a large blade, and you can also hear passengers screaming with terror on the video, and one lady calling the police.
So police stopped the train, paramedics attended the scene, but the suspect got away. The victim has been taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries. Our reporter Ray Addison is in Bromley. Ray, I think we're just waiting for Ray to come now. There's a manhunt going on, basically, that's been going on for 24 hours or so now.
So this guy's on the loose. If you've seen this massive blade, it's about 10 inches at least.
Yeah, it must be. The thing that shocked me about that footage when I watched it was the pure brutality of that moment, of another human being inflicting so much, almost calm. I know he was enraged, but it was a calm, premeditated. He could have stopped at any point from stabbing that guy.
It's the complete disregard for life, which we see frequently too much, unfortunately. Ray Addison's live in Bromley now. We have him. Good morning, Ray. Any update on this man who is on the loose, and are the public at risk?
Good morning to you both. Well, public here very concerned by this latest act of violence on the transport network. All too frequent, they say. It's just a 3-minute journey from Shortlands to Beckenham Junction. However, in that time, a frenzied knife attack took place. I spoke to someone who was in the next carriage on that train. She wants her identity to be hidden. This is what she had to tell us. Tell me about yesterday's events.
I was on the train with my daughter and it was really, really scary, and I'm actually horrified that something like this can happen in our lovely Shortlands and Bromley, and I can't believe it. I actually cannot believe it. And it's a shame that young people can actually do this to each other. Well, I'm guessing that they're young because, you know, there was lots of youngsters around. So I was in the next carriage. I was walking through to find out what was happening, and obviously at the time I didn't realise, and it's only afterwards that I realised, and we all had to get off at Beckenham Junction.
What could you hear?
I heard a lot of shouting, screaming, panic, people on phones, and there was a lot of people that ran off the train, but obviously I don't know if that's anything to do with what had actually happened or people just running because they're scared, and that's it.
When the train stopped at Beckenham Junction, what happened? Could you describe the events that followed?
Well, it was panic. Everyone was in panic. I thought someone had a heart attack. And there was people on phones, as I say. People ran through Beckenham Junction, through the doors, and there was a major panic. And then we realised that the train has come to a halt.
In terms of violence like this, we've been speaking to people here and they're saying that instances of violence on British transport are increasing. Is that something that you recognise?
It is, and it's really upsetting. And I do have a son myself, so I actually don't want him to move and do anything because it just worries me.
Well, British Transport Police are saying the victim remains in hospital with serious life-threatening injuries. That manhunt is very much underway with an increased police presence at stations.
Thank you, Ray. Great stuff. On the ground in Bromley, Sadiq Khan, one of the safest cities in the world, he says, London, breaking in the last couple of minutes a serial sex attacker on the loose in the capital, in addition to that chap with the zombie knife. But we'll move on to something a little bit more positive, shall we, Beth?
That's right.
King Charles, he's set to call for the kindness and the importance of friendship in his Maundy Thursday message later on today. It's going to be broadcast during a service in Worcester Cathedral, and this year Queen Camilla will stand in for the King, who's resting from public duties after undergoing treatment for cancer. GBNews royal correspondent Cameron Walker joins us now. Good morning, Cameron. Was the King referring to, in his message, the health predicaments of himself and the Princess of Wales, do you think?
Good morning, Ben. Well, of course, it's quite an important event in the royal calendar, and the King is head of the Church of England. It's understood he's not going to be referring directly to his cancer diagnosis or indeed the Princess of Wales, but he has recorded, as you say, a video message. It was recorded earlier this month inside Buckingham Palace. The Queen will be here in Worcester very shortly and will distribute that Maundy money on his behalf. 75 men and 75 women. That's one for every year of the King's life will be given a red purse and a white purse containing those commemorative coins and that Maundy money. But the King's message is going to stress the importance of acts of friendship, especially in times of need. He will say how Jesus set an example of how we should serve and care for each other, and how as a nation we need and benefit greatly from those who extends the hand of friendship to us. Now, of course, Maundy service is a very important event in the royal calendar. As I say, it's the start of the Easter weekend. Queen Camilla coming here very shortly.
OK, thank you, Cameron. Short but sweet. Let's cross live now to the West Midlands, where our political editor, Christopher Hope, is about to ask a question as Labour launch their local election campaign.
Different Tory party. This is a Tory party that's lost any sense of the national interest and is now passing budgets in their own party interest. That happened at the last budget. If they get the chance, they'll do it again. The only purpose of that is to salt the ground for an incoming Labour government. It's very important people understand that. So we'll pick it up. We'll support our public services and our local authorities. And we will make sure they're in a better position after a Labour government they were when we picked it up. But what's happened now is unforgivable, which is to leave your country after 14 years of government in a worse place than you found it is unforgivable, whichever political party you're in. But that's the state we're in. Thank you very much, Ian. I've got... Chris.
Christopher Hope, GB News. So Keir Starmer, you said you want no more political hero complexes, but in recent weeks, David Lammy, Rachel Reeves has praised Margaret Thatcher. Today, you've praised Boris Johnson's levelling up policy. You've got a Take Back Control Act. Obviously, Johnson is not your political hero. But why are you praising? But why are you praising Tories? Won't your critics just say you're a Tory in disguise?
Well, look, when I was speaking about Margaret Thatcher, I was singling out leaders, prime ministers, who I believed had a sense of mission, a sense of driving purpose. Now, I don't agree with her mission or her driving purpose. In fact, she did very destructive things across the country, including in the black country. And people are still paying the price of that. But I do think it's important to distinguish between leaders who have a driving sense of purpose, what they're trying to achieve, a sense of the hard yards of 5 or 10 years in government and leaving something better afterwards, than those that drift. And what have you got at the moment? What is the driving philosophy of Rishi Sunak apart from survival? What does he? I mean, people ask me, what does Labour stand for? What does Rishi Sunak stand for? He's just treading water. He's waiting. He knows the country wants change. He knows they wanted on the May the 2nd to have a general election. But he's treading water, preserving himself, party interest. And I think this is linked to the point Amy was made. I think that's why a lot of people are losing faith in politics, and we have to turn that around, Chris. It's very, very important. As for Boris Johnson, look, hands up, I'm no fan. And I do, to tap into something like levelling up, which really, levelling up as an idea has been around a very long time. Regional inequality wasn't first discovered in 2019. It's been deep for many, many years. But in tapping into that and promising that that would all change with a slogan, and then not having a viable plan, and not doing the hard yards, I mean, that is why politics is broken. That is why people don't believe in their politicians, because he pretended it could happen. He didn't do the hard yards. And that's why I think everybody is pleased to see the back of him. Thank you, Chris. Nick.
So there we go. So Keir Starmer being quizzed by GB News political editor Christopher Hope. He said, aren't you just a Tory in disguise, Sir Keir? Which is an accusation levied at him by the Corbynistas, the likes of Owen Jones, because, of course, Keir Starmer, Sir Keir, was one of Jeremy Corbyn's biggest supporters. But as with many things, policies, green pledges, he turned on that and flip-flopped.
Our inbox isn't massively impressed by that speech, let me tell you that. But keep your views coming, gbviews@gbnews.com. Now, we're going to get stuck into this scandal about zebra crossings in Blackpool being painted all of the colours. There we go, LGBTQ+, it appeared overnight. The locals are not happy about it. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Low pressure dominates the weather for the day ahead. Heavy showers, strong winds across the country. Met Office warnings in force for the strong winds across the southwest of the UK today. 60 to 70 miles an hour around the coasts. Possible some heavy rain across Northern Ireland. Continued risk of flooding here. There's some brighter breaks in between, but for many it will be a showery day. The rain heavy with some hail and thunder in there. Gusty winds too, making it feel quite chilly. So temperatures generally in the range of 9 to 12 Celsius. Add on that brisk wind, will be a chilly afternoon for many of us. That low pressure continues to swirl its way northeastwards as we go through into the evening time. Some hefty downpours possible. Some clearer spells starting to develop into the early hours, but further showers also pushing in. Under the clearest skies, we could see temperatures dip to mid to low single figures, but for most it will be a frost-free start to Friday morning. Showers from the word go across many parts of the country. Some more persistent rain still across northern Scotland, perhaps some hill snow for a time too. And then through the day, sunny spells and showers is the name of the game. Some of the showers will be heavy with hail and thunder once more. The good news is the winds will be a little lighter compared to Thursday, but with the brisk showers around, it will still feel quite chilly. Temperatures up to around 13 or 14 Celsius. See you soon.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Britain's News with me, Bev Turner, and Ben Leo, sitting here for Andrew Pearce today. So last week, Blackpool Council released this tweet. It got, unexpectedly, 2.2 million views.
It shows, and it pictures, one of their zebra crossings that was given a rainbow makeover in solidarity with the Seaside Resort's LGBT community.
So the council eventually turned the comments off the tweet. There were so many people expressing their outrage at this, but one man was undeterred and submitted a Freedom of Information request to find out how much it costs. Well, the crossing has been vandalised and sprayed with black paint, and he joins us now, journalist Callum Smiles. Good morning, Callum. Thank you for joining us. Good to see you. So what made you feel so strongly, Callum, that you needed to get to the bottom of this?
Because we're threatened through threat of violence. If we don't pay our taxes, we go to jail. And yet our taxes get, put on the roads to make zebra crossings unicorn crossings. And it outrages me for, a number of things. Firstly, it's a waste of taxpayers' money. Secondly, it impairs drivers. It is dangerous. And, you look at things like guide dogs. Dogs are colourblind. What are they going to do when they see that? Are they going to just walk with the other person they're guiding aimlessly into the road? Are they not going to do it? Apparently, it scares horses. There are so many reasons as to why this is ridiculous. And I want to quickly read. Go on.
And what was the cost to the council?
So when I did this Freedom of Information request, in the email I got back, it says, the total cost is £35,000 for 6 separate crossings. The money has come from a fund that is specifically there to improve public spaces and can't be used for potholes or any other highways maintenance. Now, roads are public spaces. And across this country, our roads right now have more holes in them than Colin does. Those public spaces need fixing. Now, the average cost in England for a reactive pothole repair is £71.40. So that money could have fixed 490 potholes. For planned works, the average cost is £45.83. So that could have fixed 763 potholes. Instead, my taxpayer money, or, unfortunately, people in Blackpool, is going on spreading this woke agenda.
And Callum, did they consult the council? Did they consult any of the residents about this? Did they say, 'Guys, is this a good way to spend 35k? Are you happy with this?'
Well, clearly not, because if they'd have consulted them, people have gone, hold on. We've got a cost of living crisis. You're wanting to charge me more in taxes, and you want to put it towards this? No, these people never consult anyone when they want to push this ideology. They have no mandates for it, and unfortunately, they get away with it.
What I find amazing is how the council have failed to read the room, because the public response to this was pure outrage. Now, all those people are not homophobic. All those people are not transphobic. These are going to be normal people with, as your T-shirt says, full of common sense, who will include and embrace anybody who wants to live the life they want to lead. But the feeling, I think, is that, as you say, it's an ideology which is being paid for. How did the council get it so wrong?
Well, the question we should be asking is, when the hell did councils get it right? You know, firstly, this isn't the first council to do it. The first time I saw this was driving through Kingston in London. And I actually, you know, I was that shocked. I wasn't looking in front of me because I was like, what the hell is that on the road? So that's just one man driving. So if everyone else does that, at some point...
OK, Callum, we're going to... apologies, but great effort on this story. It's fantastic. We're going to have to leave it there, though. We're pushed for time. And if you did see any messages in the background there which you took offence at, apologies. Nothing intended. OK, this is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Don't go anywhere.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good day to you. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Another unsettled day ahead with some heavy rain and some strong winds too, because we are still under the influence of low pressure like we have been through much of this week. So a blustery and showery theme for many of us. The strongest winds today will be across the south coast. The heaviest rain likely to be across eastern parts of Northern Ireland. We do have a couple of warnings out. The showery rain, as it pushes its way northwards across much of England and Wales, brings the risk of some hail and some thunder. Meanwhile, across parts of Scotland, we could see some sleet and snow over the higher ground. Temperatures will be around or a little bit below average for the time of year, but feeling noticeably colder in those strong winds. More showery rain to come as we go through this evening, all of it pushing its way northwards, and there will be something a little bit drier and perhaps clearer for a time developing as we go through the early hours of Good Friday. Could allow for a touch of frost and a few patches of fog to develop, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, but most places are going to hold up a few degrees above freezing. Otherwise, as we go through Good Friday, and again, it is going to be a blustery start and some showers developing as we go through the day. Some of them could once more be heavy with some further hail and thunder mixed in, but there should be some drier or perhaps even brighter spells in between the showers, and temperatures are actually going to be up a few degrees compared to today, and with that, the winds will be easing too, so it should feel a little more pleasant. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could win big. You could win an amazing £12,345 in tax-free cash that you could spend however you like. Plus, there's a further £500 of shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. We'll also give you a gadget package to use in your garden this spring. That includes a games console, a pizza oven and a portable smart speaker, so you can listen to GB News on the go. You have to hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 11 a.m. on Thursday, March 28th. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Ben Leo, in for Andrew Pearce, and Bev Turner.
Very good morning. Thanks for joining us. So there is a manhunt underway. A man is in a life-threatening condition after being stabbed horribly on a train in London yesterday in broad daylight. Ray Addison has more.
Police say the incident started here with two men fighting at Shortlands station and ended with a frenzied knife attack in front of horrified passengers. I'll have details from a woman who was on board that train.
Never teach again. That's the outcome of former teacher Kevin Lister's tribunal after he apparently humiliated a student by not using their preferred pronouns. Here's what he told us earlier.
I am devastated. I just don't know what to say. The statement that Carla Kitching has just said, that it was the way that I harassed and discriminated against student A, is nonsense.
And Easter getaway chaos. Drivers are being warned of Carmageddon with 14 million getaway trips set to cause gridlock on the roads. Will you be one of those? Jack Carson is in Birmingham.
Yeah, 2 million people expected to travel just today, and that just increases over the Easter weekend. I'm above the M6 and I'll have all of the details for you.
And the King's Maunday message. Today he'll thank those who extend the hand of friendship in times of need in his Easter message.
Have you got a big Easter weekend planned with your little ones, Ben?
I'm working.
Oh.
And do you know what? I love Easter. It's my favourite time of the year.
Me too.
We get, traditionally on Easter Sunday, we have boiled eggs, and we call them egg dippies, a bit juvenile, but croissants, nice juices and stuff.
I love Easter. We have a big birthday celebration in my house this weekend. My mother's 80, my dad is 88 over the weekend. In fact, one of them is their birthday today, but I can't remember which one. Happy birthday, Mum or Dad, whichever one it is today. I know, but we're going to celebrate all over the weekend. Hope you're doing something fun. Do let us know what you're going to be doing. gbviews@gbnews.com. First, though, the very latest news with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good morning to you. It's 2 minutes past 11. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. The Labour leader says Britain wants change as he outlined his party's election campaign. Speaking at an event in the West Midlands, Sir Keir Starmer pledged a national renewal, promising to axe zero-hour contracts and give new powers to local mayors to rejuvenate the high street.
Stability with Labour or more chaos with the Tories? Unity or division? Renewal or decline? A changed Labour Party ready to serve the interests of working people, or a Conservative Party that has forgotten how to serve anything other than itself?
Police are searching for a suspect after a stabbing on a London train yesterday afternoon. A warning if you're watching on TV, there are some distressing images to follow. Graphic footage shared on social media shows a masked man attacking another man with a large knife. while concerned passengers can be heard calling for help. It happened just before 4 p.m. between Shortlands and Beckenham Junction on a train bound for Victoria Station. The victim's been taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries, and a manhunt is underway. An eyewitness told GB News reporter Ray Addison the attack took place in front of children.
I was on the train with my daughter and it was really, really scary, and I just am actually horrified that something like this can happen in our lovely Shortlands and Bromley, and I can't believe it. I actually cannot believe it. And it's a shame that young people can actually do this to each other. I was in the next carriage. I was walking through to find out what was happening, and obviously at the time I didn't realise, and it's only afterwards that I realised, and we all had to get off at Beckenham Junction.
And former Met Police detective Peter Blexley says it's become the norm for emergency services.
It's a terrifying experience for anybody who's unfortunate enough to be on that train, I'm sure. But of course, not out of the ordinary for the 999 responders, the paramedics and the police who will have attended this dreadful incident, because this is the kind of thing they witness and see the results of only too often, I'm afraid, in Great Britain in 2024.
The Chancellor says he believes Thames Water is solvent, despite shareholders withholding extra cash to keep it afloat. £500 million was to be invested before the end of the month, but shareholders now say the business plan is uninvestable. They want the regulator off what to increase customers' bills by up to 40% over 5 years. Rowers in this weekend's boat race have been advised not to enter the water because of high levels of E. coli as a result of failings by Thames Water. The company, which serves nearly a quarter of the UK's population, has debts of more than £15 billion.
Treasury will continue to monitor very carefully what's happening at Thames Water. Our understanding is that the company is still solvent, and today's news should not have an impact on the services received by customers. Obviously, there are parts of the country where the service has not been up to scratch, including in my own constituency, and local MPs will continue to hold Thames Water to account in those situations. But overall, we will continue to watch the situation very carefully.
Last year's recession was less severe than first thought. That's according to revised figures. The Office for National Statistics found the economy still shrunk for 2 quarters in a row, but the total contraction over that 6-month period dropped from 0.5% to 0.1%. The government says it's proof their plan's working. Divers have recovered the bodies of 2 workers in Baltimore after Tuesday's bridge collapse. State police say they were found trapped underwater in a truck near the midsection of the fallen Key Bridge. The collapse of the bridge, a major highway across the harbour, has forced the Port of Baltimore to close. Millions of people are being urged to send meter readings to their energy supplier this weekend to ensure they don't overpay. The average household energy bill is to fall to its lowest point in 2 years from next month after Ofgem lowered its price cap. It will drop 12.3% next Monday, taking a typical £1,900 yearly household bill to just under £1,700, an average saving of about £20 each month. And if you're planning on travelling this Easter weekend, well, you might want to set your alarm clock to go off early. The RAC's warning of long delays, with journeys on some of the most popular routes taking twice as long as they should. With the bank holiday weekend coinciding with the Easter holidays, some 14 million journeys are expected over the coming days. Much of the congestion is expected to begin this evening, and drivers are being advised to consider travelling outside of peak times. Well, you can get the latest on our stories by signing up to GB News Alerts. The QR code's on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, back to Ben and Bev.
It's 11:07. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Ben Leo, in for Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So, a teacher who lost his job for what he said was his refusal to use, or what's been claimed his refusal to use a student's preferred pronoun, has had his unfair dismissal claim rejected, and now he will never teach again.
Yeah, we spoke to the teacher, Kevin Lister, earlier on the show. This is what he said.
Her friend, student B, stays behind after class and demands and instructs me that I need to refer to student A as a male. And I tried to give a reason why I thought it was the idea of transitioning is a bad idea. And that's the only two conversations I had. That was the sole thing that was used to support the claim of discrimination and harassment.
So this is... Sorry.
No.
Ladies first.
No. Well, in a statement, New College Swindon have said a thorough investigation resulted in Mr Lister being dismissed for actions that were deemed discriminatory, causing significant upset and potential harm to a student amounting to gross misconduct and not simply for holding gender-critical beliefs.
Yeah, so joining us now in the studio is barrister Sam Fowles, who's going to lay out the legal intricacies around this case. Was it as simple as Kevin Lister being sacked because he wouldn't use the pupils' pronouns?
Definitely not. I mean, I had the misfortune to read this case this morning because it's
several pages of it.
It's quite long, and it's not pleasant reading when you read what Kevin Lister did to this poor kid. This was a course of conduct in which he repeatedly did what, in my view, seemed to be humiliated the kid in front of the class. And eventually, over the course of a year, he... Initially, yes, he had his concerns. He reported them to the safeguarding officer. The safeguarding officer investigated it and said, nothing to see here, carry on with your job. He took it upon himself to intrude in the student's private life, to try and get the student's friends to intrude in their private life, to humiliate them in front of the class. And what happened, actually, was the other kids in the class called him out and stood up to him.
Well, he says one other child. Do you think that child's parents should know that they were considering living in a different gender?
In this case, the child's parents did know. So
Do you think they should, though?
So I think it's up to the child.
That's where you and I disagree, Sam.
Well...
and that's what that teacher will say as well. It's not up to just them. The parents need to know. And Kevin was really keen to point out that his concern was at that stage the parents weren't involved.
So the court was very clear in finding that the parents were both involved and supportive. But I get you're raising a bigger issue, and I probably gave you a little bit of a glib answer there, to be fair. It's not as simple as they always should know, they sometimes should know, they always shouldn't know. Every case is different, and every case is difficult. And what safeguarding of children means is you look at the individual child's context and you put the individual child first.
Sorry to interject there. I have to, as a parent. In every case, I argue parents should know. Under what circumstances shouldn't a parent know that their child, who's not old enough to consent to tattoos or even drink or even go and fight for their country, in what stratosphere are they able to consent to change their gender and all the arguable harms that comes with it?
Well, I have seen and argued cases where the greatest threat to the child is the parents themselves. So that's the answer. Sometimes all the parents I know, I'm sure all the parents you know, are fantastic parents, brilliantly supportive to their kids. That's not every parent, and particularly in the case of trans children.
But it is so subjective, that issue, as whether the parent is wishing that child any harm. So, for instance, if you have a child who is concerned and conflicted about their gender identity, you could say, I think what you're saying is it could be that the parents are not going to respond well to that. They're not going to confirm what that child wants. I would say sometimes it's quite good to have people who love you not confirming such a thing.
Well, to be honest, what I'm more worried about is where they beat the child up. And these are the sort of cases I'm talking about, the safeguarding cases I'm talking about. There are cases that I've seen of trans children that have had to run away, that have, and in some cases, been driven to suicide because their parents are bullying them, in much the same way this teacher bullied the poor kid in this case.
But does that not suggest, therefore, that some trans children might be conflicted and emotionally troubled because of their upbringing? And therefore, there needs to be a multidisciplinary approach to that individual.
There does, and there is. There was a multidisciplinary approach to in the case of Kevin Lister, and there was a lot of experts who all looked at this, all talked to the child, offered the child support, and in some cases talking therapies, and really looked at it in the round and found that, yes, this child knows what they're doing. They weren't on puberty blockers. They were socially transitioning. There was no chemicals involved at this stage. The only Kevin Lister's job was to teach that kid maths. And that seems to be, according to Case, the only thing that he didn't manage to do successfully, because under his tutelage, the child's performance at maths declined. So you've got someone not doing their actual job.
Is that only a teacher's job, though? Is that? And now that we are dealing with this situation, we said to Kevin Lister, if you could have your time again, wouldn't it have just been easier just to confirm and just go along with this? And he said no. He said he absolutely believes that it was right for him to teach in the way that he did. And he said he didn't go out of his way to cause any distress to this individual. And the conversation about whether they were a girl or a boy arose because of a submission to a girls-only maths test. And he spoke to the child to say, are you sure you want to enter this? Because they were then identifying as a boy.
So that's not the facts that the court found. Okay. What the court found was the child said they were uncomfortable with being entered into that maths test by him. And in response, he wrote their dead name up on the board in front of all their peers. And there wasn't one conversation, there were multiple conversations throughout the year. This kid seems incredible, by the way, because this kid isn't responding to him by screaming and shouting. They're responding to him by taking him aside after class and saying, look, this isn't OK, you're distressing me.
He says those conversations were had with the friend, child B, rather than child A.
There's conversations with both child B and child A, and eventually 6 children were interviewed by the school, and they said, we've got a list of problematic statements. And this is the other problem, I think, with what he did. With teachers needs to teach children. And they need to teach the children whether they're gay, whether they're straight, whether they're religious, whether they're agnostic, whether they're Tories, whether they're Labour. You can't treat a child differently just because your political ideology doesn't fit with them.
He would argue he's teaching them to abide by the laws of reality and biological fact, surely. You can't expect a teacher to perpetuate what he would argue is a harmful myth that will lead them down a dark path of potentially harmful surgery, a life of self-harm, etc., etc. Does he not owe it as a teacher to try and protect his students?
He's a maths teacher. He doesn't know anything about this stuff. He's got absolutely zero credibility to talk about any of this. It's like me coming on here and trying to talk to you guys about astrophysics. You know, he is absolutely not qualified to be doing anything to do with this.
Let me get this straight. So if he just refused to abide by the pronouns, would he still have been sacked? Under the law, is he protected? Because he says he's concerned about the future of the profession. So if there's other teachers watching this now who don't want to abide by their pupils' preferred pronouns, are they safe under the law?
I think it depends how long they do it for and how they manifest it. So for something like what he did, which is a course of conduct, then yes, that's going to be problematic, and that is under the law. That's discrimination. If it's a few slip-ups, everyone makes mistakes, and I don't think anyone's going to get on top of them for that.
So, yeah, well, we could talk about... We've run out of time, Sam, but honestly, I find it so fascinating. And this is a conversation about power, above all else. It's about who has the power in the classroom. And I'm sorry, call me old-fashioned, but I like teachers to have power in the classroom, whilst also, of course, exercising compassion and kindness to any pupil who is clearly struggling with their identity. Sam, always great to see you. Thank you so much.
Sam. Right, still to come. How does London celebrate Easter, the Christian festival, of course? I need not remind you. But in this case, under Sadiq Khan, with Ramadan lights, of course. Here they are, lining Oxford Street. You're with Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
Serving police officers, showing that up to 20% of them are thinking about quitting the force and doing so within the next year or two. What on earth is going wrong? Problem, of course, is that those that go will be the experienced ones to be replaced by inexperienced ones. Kevin Hurley, former Detective Chief Superintendent at the Met Police, joins me from his home in Surrey. Kevin, this figure is shocking.
The terms and conditions have really dropped off under Theresa May's, what I would describe as an attack on the police service, where their pay has really dropped off, spending power down about 22% on what it once was. Worse still, the golden handcuffs, which were once the excellent police pension, have been taken away and the pension is now much reduced. The other thing that's killing them is the constant media and activist battering for police officers. Off the back of that one psychopath and the other, if you like, Tinder rapist, everybody now thinks the police are kind of all like that. What that means for the individual patrol officers, they're being given stick everywhere. For example, you know, their bosses left, right and centre are rolling over, oh yes, we're institutionally racist. What that means for a 25-year-old constable working in Balham High Street is everyone screaming at him, you're a racist pig. They get surrounded on the streets when they try and do a stop and search or an arrest. Add to that the fact that the criminal justice system is collapsing. They're tipping out the prisons with early releases, so because, of course, there's no prison space. Cases are taking years to get to court. They're getting derisory sentences because there's no room in the prisons. All of that's really demoralising for the police.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, 11:20. Bev and Ben this morning while Andrew's on his holidays. Now, we're joined by broadcaster and journalist Carol Malone and author and broadcaster Nikki Hodgson in the studio. First, though...
Yes, the Queen has arrived at Worcester Cathedral for the annual Royal Maunday service and... doesn't she look nice? There we are.
There
you know what?
go.
I'm a massive fan of Queen Camilla because the absolute abuse she got for decades in the wake of the... She's really reinvented herself. She's worked hard at it, and some would argue, as compared to, say, Meghan Markle...
Her nickname, you know, was the most hated woman in Britain. That was her moniker for a very long time.
And when you watch The Crown, from where I get a lot of my royal historical knowledge from these days, let me tell you, oh, that character is very unsympathetic, Nikki. Well, you know, when you think where Camilla came from as the other woman.
Absolutely. And obviously, you know, they've been together for so long now. It's a true love match and their relationship stood the test of time. And the other thing about Camilla is she does loads of good work behind the scenes. You don't actually hear a lot about the things she works on. She does a lot of stuff with children and literacy, with women and domestic violence.
The rumours are, though, she's quite lazy. She doesn't like...
Well, I can imagine that. I get that vibe.
She doesn't want to do it, and she goes away for periods of time on her own, so she doesn't have to do any work. I mean, she's having to do it now because they're all pitching in now because of, you know...
That's fine. I don't mind that. I need a holiday every...
Right, talking of holidays, it's Easter, Carol, so of course we celebrate this with Ramadan lights.
Yes, of course we do. In fact, so Oxford Street is awash with Ramadan lights. Now, I've got no objections to that whatsoever, none. I'm happy to see it. However, I'm wondering where the Happy Easter lights are all over the City of London and elsewhere. The Christian tradition, there doesn't appear to be one. This Ramadan one has been what's the word, sponsored by a very, very rich businessman. And that's fine, and Sadiq Khan gave permission for it. But it's interesting that there's also Ramadan big sign lights in Westminster City Hall offices. No Easter one. Bizarre. And this just adds to my belief that Christianity is being eroded in the
So we had they sound really inane examples on their own, but we had the hot cross buns.
Yes, and then Easter eggs, gesture eggs
and Cadbury's. Nikki, is there an erasure of the Christian faith?
Well, there is, because nobody's going to church. People don't believe anymore. Christianity is on its way out in this country. I mean, you can say that we were formed on Christian principles, but in terms of practising faith, the church is in dire straits. And people don't care anymore. You know, people still, you know, some people still get their children baptised, some people still get married in church, but actually deep faith in God, no, people don't have it in this country.
Is it surprising if we don't celebrate the faith? You know, if people who go into the workplace get told to take their crucifix off. You know, I'm wondering if, you know, the business of these gesture eggs, I wonder if we'd ever mess with an Islamic tradition the way we mess with the Christian one. And Cadbury's yesterday denied and said, this is not our fault. This is a company that's doing that. Sorry. But it is Cadbury's fault. So that's a cop-out. Because Cadbury's could actually say to companies, you call these Easter eggs or we don't sell them to you.
So the Cadbury's position on that was that they'd supplied these eggs to an independent store, and what that independent store chose to put in the window of their shop was entirely up to them.
So was it on the box?
No, it wasn't on the boxes.
box.
And Cadbury's were very clear, saying for 100 years we use Easter eggs and we won't stop using Easter eggs.
Which was the shop?
It was an independent outlet store. I think it was... I'm not going to quote it, but it was an independent outlet store that takes chocolate eggs and sells them for a slightly cheaper prices in Lincolnshire. So they were very clear to say this isn't us. But is this happening? Yes. I just wonder, though, Nikki, when I'm thinking about that, isn't this just about historical and how the wheel turns?
Yeah.
Because Christianity was on the decline, very much so, because it had grown a little bit old and stuffy. People see that they can't relate to it, and maybe the churches and the communities don't cut through with the younger people. And then, of course, we've had an influx of more Islamic communities, and they have then pushed their communities and their religions to the forefront. And maybe that wheel will just inevitably turn at some point. And
I fully expect it will. I mean, you just have to look at the dedication of a lot of Muslims as well to their faith, the lengths they go to, you know, in Ramadan to fast. I don't know, to pay certain taxes to look after the community. Not everybody, but lots of people. Half my family are Muslim. They are very faithful. They are very religious, and they fully believe, you know, in the power of God and the power of heaven. I just absolutely do not. And most people in this country who are Christian don't anymore, and I can't relate to it.
No, I don't think that's true. You know, I've done a couple of shows where we talked about Christianity, and the phones were alive with Christians saying, you know, we're not allowed to celebrate in the way we want to. Of course, we believe in God. We want to celebrate our faith, and they are the people who do go to church. I mean, I'm a Catholic, and Easter means a lot to me. And this is one of the most important events in the Christian calendar. You see, you know, there's the birth of Christ, which we're not allowed to call Christmas anymore, and then there's the death of Christ, which we're not allowed to celebrate. It's a time of gesture. Somebody actually said to me yesterday, you know, what have eggs got to do with it? I said, well, the egg's symbolic. It's not supposed to be a chocolate egg, but it's symbolic of new life, of the resurrection. But a lot of people don't know that, and they don't understand, because they're not being taught in schools anymore. Lots of schools don't have assemblies anymore.
And Nikki, you make a great point. Actually, in a weird way, I admire Islam for the way they take no nonsense when it comes to their faith. You know, Christianity, we let people walk all over it.
Well, this is it. You can't be one foot in and 1 foot out in Islam. You can't. I mean, I think the thing about Christianity, actually taking Carol's point there, what's disturbing is that the bedrock of our society is kind of Christological, and all our references, like all the things that we kind of celebrate and go to, are Christian. And if younger people don't understand those, they are disconnected from our society in this kind of fundamental way, you know. But that disconnection is just growing, you know. I mean, I don't know how you grow the Christian faith when there have been so many problems with abuse, with the way that LGBT people are treated, and women, like women bishops. I mean, God, that took so long.
When you've got Justice Welby, you know, the head of the Anglican Church, in the House of Lords all the time, when he should be, you know, it doesn't matter to him that his congregations are plummeting by the day. He's more interested in being a politician and interfering in that way. You know, if you have the people at the top not interested in promoting the religion, it's no wonder that that young people aren't catching on.
We need some, like, cool vicars, don't we? We need some...
We've had the odd one. We do get them from time to time, and they become a media star, and then they kind of, like, drill up a little bit of interest.
I tell you what might also do, I don't know whether you've seen this, but Russell Brand is undergoing something of a Christian conversion.
God.
Please. So he'll drag along... He will drag along a whole generation of people into Christianity.
You said in Islam you can't be half in, half out. I mean, I don't consider myself religious in that sense, but I've always said publicly I've got some sort of affinity with Jesus. So, and Christians on, say, Twitter, they've lambasted me for that, saying you can't be half in, half out. But
that's interesting.
am I not allowed to...
I mean, obviously there's always a variety of strengths of faith within a community. I don't mean it like that. You know, there's some people that that tie to it more than others. But I think what this is to do with is kind of like the power and the growth of Islam across the world, remember? Like, think about all the countries where huge swathes of Muslims are increasing. Think about in our prisons where people are converting to Islam. You know, like, in terms of a religion that can bring people in, it's unparalleled.
Well, talking about a gear change, it's party weekend coming up. Now, if you're over a certain age and you're thinking about having a little bit of frisky fun, there's a warning, Carol, isn't there?
This story, I wasn't sure whether this was quite right to be talking about in the morning, really.
We're very broad-minded here.
Put you off your breakfast. But then I realised I'm in the age group they're talking about. And it's saying that the over 50s, between 50 and 70, they should have safe sex educations. They call them the silver surfers. And because of a lot of people going to retirement homes and taking Viagra, and women are on HRT, they're at it like, what's the word?
Hang on, this happens in retirement homes?
Yes.
Yes.
And cruises.
Yes.
I know cruises, but
and what's
retirement
happened?
Retirement homes have a huge problem,
Massive rise in STIs. And I'm thinking, seriously, gonorrhea? I mean,
well, this has been, it's been happening for a little while, this, Nikki. I don't know whether you as a journalist have been tapped into this topic. I have. I find it fairly fascinating.
Yeah, I have, because I used to do a lot of sexual health stuff. And even 10 years ago, this was a phenomenon, let's say. You know, there's this problem in nursing homes in general, actually, talking about sex, about the patients having sex.
Nursing homes as well?
Yeah, nursing homes as well. Yeah, because, and then, you know, there's all these kind of things that we don't talk about with...
He's going to have treatment in a minute.
I mean...
He's going to have a little lie down.
I just thought they went to retirement homes to play Scrabble and...
No, they don't do that at all. They've all got porn collections that have to be disposed of after they die, and all this kind of stuff. Oh, yeah, I've watched all this story.
It's true. It says here, you know, this poll came out at the University of Warsaw. This guy saying people do not become asexual with age. And he's saying, this guy, we need more role models like Samantha Jones. Now, if we all look like her, we wouldn't have a problem having sex. But however, we don't all look like her.
But it is genuinely a problem, Nikki, isn't it? The numbers are kind of quite shocking on this. And this generation, they can't get pregnant. They're not worried about that. And
that's traditionally where STI services target, or how STI services target people, or they target people around HIV. I mean, we haven't seen a resurgence or an uptick in HIV in that category of people. So that's quite fascinating in itself. I mean, the other thing I was going to say is that there've just been diabolical Tory cuts to STI services for the past 20 years.
Stop it! You cannot bring the Tories into 70-year-old sex. It's interesting. There's an English poll said half the men at 70 admitted to being very sexually active, and a third of women. I mean, that's always a lot.
But that's always intriguing, Carol, because men always lie and women always lie as well. Women take the number down and men increase the number. That's why you get that discrepancy.
So it's probably he's going to have to have a
lie down.
Are you due to see your grandparents this weekend, Bear? We might have just raised the topic. You can bring them over the leg of lamb.
I've always said I don't want to end up in a retirement home. I'd rather be gone before then.
Change your mind.
I don't know if you...
The places to
Sounds
be.
all right.
Things are looking up.
Get some Viagra in there, possibly.
Right. On that, ladies, thank you so much. I've got a bit of a sweat on here. Right. Thanks, Carol. Thanks, Nikki. It's time for your news headlines now with Aaron Armstrong. You all right?
Yeah. Good.
And it's 11:31. Very good morning to you from the GB Newsroom. Police are searching for a suspect who stabbed a man on a London train yesterday afternoon. A warning, if you're watching on TV, there are some distressing images to come. Graphic footage shared on social media shows a masked man with a large knife carrying out a violent attack, while concerned passengers can be heard calling for help. It happened just before 4 p.m. Between Shortlands and Beckenham on a train bound for Victoria Station. The victim's been taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries, and a manhunt is underway. The Chancellor says he believes Thames Water is solvent, despite shareholders withholding extra cash to keep it afloat. £500 million was to be invested before the end of the month, but shareholders say the business plan is uninvestable. They want the regulator, Ofwat, to increase customer bills by up to 40% over 5 years. Last year's recession was less severe than first thought. That's according to revised figures. The Office for National Statistics has found the economy still shrunk for 2 quarters in a row, but the total contraction over that 6-month period dropped from 0.5% to 0.1%. The government says it's proof their plan's working. The Labour leader says Britain wants change. He has outlined his party's election campaign. Speaking at an event in the West Midlands, Sir Keir Starmer pledged a national renewal, promising to axe zero-hour contracts and give new powers to local mayors to rejuvenate the high streets.
Stability with Labour or more chaos with the Tories? Unity or division? Renewal or decline? A changed Labour Party ready to serve the interests of working people, or a Conservative Party that has forgotten how to serve anything other than itself?
Well, you can get more on all of our stories by signing up to GB News Alerts. Scan the QR code on your screen or go to our website, gbnews.com/alerts.
For exclusive, limited edition and rare gold coins that are always newsworthy, Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
The latest from the markets today. The pound buys you $1.2619, €1.1693. At the price of gold, £1,752.39 per ounce. The FTSE 100 is trading at 7,953 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Up at noon, good afternoon, Britain, with Emily and Tom. They're with us now. What's coming up on the show today, guys?
We are indeed. Well, we were both horrified by what we saw on social media last night with this horrific stab attack in broad daylight on a train carriage, other commuters around. And we want to talk about it, essentially. And then the news of only a few hours later, another stabbing attack, this time on a platform in the capital city. We want to ask what's going wrong in our capital. Have the police lost control of our streets? What can be done about this? Is Sadiq Khan to blame? Who is to blame?
And it does seem that these are increasingly common. We do hear, of course, about people who have been killed by stabbings fairly frequently now. But more common than that, of course, are the threats and the attacks, and some of which are now being caught on video and are being published on social media. It seems that this is a growing problem in the capital most perniciously compared to elsewhere in the country where it doesn't seem to be quite so
well,
rife.
So Sadiq Khan says that London's one of the safest cities in the world. However, Mark White, in addition to those two stories you've just talked about, he's put out a story in the last hour saying there's a serial sex attacker on the loose in London and women and girls should be very wary.
Oh, brilliant. Now, do you know what? I think anecdotally, a lot of my female friends are feeling on edge.
Yeah.
Are feeling unsafe, less safe than they used to for a number of different reasons.
Yeah.
Now, of course, Sadiq Khan is right that that London is one of the safer large cities in the world, but that's when you include a list of cities, quite frankly, in countries that are a lot less wealthy and a lot less far developed than the United Kingdom is, that have a lot less sense of rule of law and order. And so, quite frankly, that's a strange comparison to make.
We're going backwards.
Should we be comparing ourselves to the whole world, or perhaps just to developed countries?
And what else on the show?
Well, we're also looking at Angela Rayner's tax affairs, because this morning she has been doing the rounds saying that, launching the Labour Party local election campaign, but it's been rather overshadowed by the police having another look at what happened with the sale of one of Angela Rayner's houses quite some years ago.
Also,
no tax was paid on that sale.
Is she a bit of a hypocrite here? She's saying, oh no, the British public should believe me when I say I haven't done anything wrong. I'm not going to publish my tax affairs. But in the past, she has called for Tory politicians to reveal their tax affairs.
The bill was only 1,500 quid, but that's not the point, is it? It's the principle.
Well, certainly, I mean, £1,500 goes quite a long way to many, many families. And frankly, to be so obfuscatory around the idea of publishing this or not even showing, allegedly, not even showing Sir Keir Starmer the tax advice that she's received, it raises some quite key questions.
Well, there will be no obfuscatory nonsense between 12 and 3 with Emily and Tom. They will be getting to the bottom of all that and more from midday. For now, though, you're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Come back to me and Ben.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Can the Church of England not spend their money as they wish?
The Church of England can do amazing things for this country and for the world, and I'm not sure why it's chosen to focus on this specific issue. You know, one of the causes that I've always thought the Church was very good at were things called almshouses, which were basically houses that would be built on church estates for the needy. Not only did they want to spend £100 million on this fund, that they wanted to spend £1 billion on reparations as well. Well, why not spend 100 million or £1 billion on a new generation of almshouses, as opposed to just helping one group of people, black British people? Why not just help all people in need?
Alex?
Well, I just don't understand what the Church of England is trying to do. It's on its deathbed.
Congregations have reduced. I mean, deathbed is maybe a little bit...
Well, look, if we look over 20 years, it's dramatically lower than it used to be. And a lot of criticism from actual Christians come from the values that the Church of England are now propagating. And Justin Welby has a lot to answer for, because, you know, not only are we seeing in the news this mass conversion of illegal immigrants to a gay mass system in the UK, but now we're seeing them spending money... And as Albie actually pointed out correctly, in a way that doesn't really benefit broader society. It benefits a very small group of people. So I just don't know where it's going to end. This committee has also said 1 million's not enough. It's 100 million, sorry.
Church commissioners are now hoping for a target of 1 billion.
I mean, it's woke nonsense, isn't it?
You could make the argument that this is charity. Justin Welby's job is to be a virtue signaller, is it not?
Should charity discriminate? I mean, that's what he's saying. We're only going to give this to people from a specific skin colour or background. I don't think that's very Christian of them.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Gloria De Piero. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. Good morning to you. It's 11:40. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Ben Leo, in for Andrew Pearce and the lovely Bev Turner.
Oh, lovely. Andrew Pearce never says that about me. Right, new research shows that a quarter of households with more than one car are now considering getting rid of their second vehicle due to increased premiums, road tax increases and, of course, the wonderful low emission zones.
Yeah, so we're joined now by motoring journalist Amanda Stretton, who joins us live. Good morning, Amanda. This kind of gives weight behind the feeling for a lot of motorists who feel like they're just constantly getting stuffed and stifled behind the wheel.
Absolutely. I think motorists these days are just feeling more and more and more squeezed. Costs are rising, whether those be direct costs to them, as you say, through things like insurance, or petrol prices, which are still very, very high, or the indirect costs. You know, road tax is going up, road quality is going down, parking is impossible, parking costs are going up. It is increasingly difficult for motorists to actually see the sense in keeping two cars if they feel they can get away with one.
I like the quote, I think it was Jordan Peterson who said it, about the car is a radical symbol of freedom and independence, which I just think is so true. Do we need reminding, Amanda, of what we lose if we lose our autonomy behind the wheel?
I think there's 2 points there. First of all, as you say, there's our autonomy behind the wheel. I mean, thinking back to when certainly I was young, passing my driving test was hugely significant because it gave me freedom. So that's one point. The second point, though, is I think what it's actually doing to our communities, because it's not so much about our autonomy and freedom, it's about the fact, and it's about the way we live our life. I live 4 or 5 miles outside of Oxford, and driving in Oxford is so impossible now, either with LTNs or with parking. I actually have not driven into Oxford for probably nearly a year. And that is having a detrimental on businesses, on the way our town cities feel, the way they operate. So it's changing more than just our freedom and liberty. It's changing our environment.
I'm glad you brought up the Oxford example, Amanda, because that is one of these so-called 15-minute cities that's being trialled as a place. I went to Oxford recently. I have to say, I found the park and ride system very good in Oxford. I went for the weekend, you park your car outside the city, you get on a bus, and then it takes you in. Now, what does that mean? It means that I can't shop with loads of bags. I couldn't have managed with a buggy with a kid in it and done the shopping. I would have found it more difficult in a wheelchair, for instance. Who's fighting for these people?
Well, again, this is the problem. I mean, there's a lot of people who are in a very similar situation to me that are just finding it impossible. It's actually quite depressing because it's totally, as I say, changing the way we live and our environment, as well as obviously hurting our pockets as well. You talked about the park and ride. The park and ride nearest to me is the same one that London commuters use. So that's generally full at about 7:30 in the morning. So unless I want to head into Oxford at around then, it's not really a feasible option for me. And I have no other public transport options in the village that I live. So nobody is fighting. It just seems to be a downward spiral. We know councils are cash strapped. We know pressure on the public purse is only increasing. And the problem is the way everything is looking at the moment, everything is just being botched, patched up, nothing, there is no major significant investment in infrastructure and actually making it better for anybody. I think people are really just starting to get a bit miserable with the situation.
Yeah. Amanda, you say councils are cash strapped, but they're spending millions and millions on 20-mile-an-hour zones, increased cycle lanes. I went to Brighton shopping the other week. I was charged £22 an hour for parking in one of their council-run car parks. I mean, what is the end game? Is this intentional? And if so, where does it end up?
Well, we've also got the added complexity of an environmental crisis that we are all well aware of. And we know people have got to be encouraged to start thinking about mobility differently and using their cars in a different way. And I am a total advocate of that. So in everything I say, I hope that doesn't, that message isn't confused in any way. However, we can't just swipe everybody down with the one bullet solution, if you like, which is just to raise costs. We have to encourage people by actually providing them with a decent, usable, affordable alternative. And that is where we're actually struggling at the moment, because I certainly am not seeing a huge evidence of it in my area. I know there are other areas that are better, but it is a real problem.
Amanda, I don't know whether you saw the research earlier this week about the number of young people who like the idea of a car subscription service. So this is where you don't own your own car, and it's not like hiring or leasing a car. It's where you pay a monthly fee and then you can pick up a car if there's one available. Maybe the young people know something I don't know, but that sounds like my nightmare.
It's funny, isn't it, how perception is so different. This car subscription model has actually been growing in popularity over the last few years, and it really benefits people who live in cities who find it very easy to walk to wherever there is a subscription sort of drop-off collection point. They can therefore use cars to drive in and out and to actually make trips, for longer trips, if you like, more often out into the country rather than within a town as well. And it also sort of feeds into the sort of the more the mindset of younger people. They're much happier to they're much more comfortable with this subscription model. It fits in more with a mobile phone. You pay your money, you use it when you want it, and this isn't such an anathema to the young people. Of course, to people of my generation, I'm only going to speak for myself and not for you two. I like owning my own car. I like knowing it's there when I want it, and
And if you need it in an emergency to get the kids to A&E, you've got your car. Again, it's families, it's parents, it's the elderly who want that flexibility. Amanda, great to see you. You know what else that car subscription is, Ben?
You'll own nothing and be happy.
By 2030, you'll own nothing and you will be happy.
Well, you know what? When you don't own anything, you have no assets to conserve, nothing to protect, you're more influenced. If you look in China, If you misbehave, if you get a parking ticket, if you row with your neighbour, you'll then, according to their social credit score, refused access to financial services, to travel between cities. So, you know, it's all very well having subscription services and not owning stuff. However, I do fear in 20, 30 years, if you don't obey like a good little citizen, you won't have access to those kind of things.
Now, you must obey us like a good little viewer and come back, because we're sticking with drivers. We're going to see live pictures of Birmingham. We're being warned of Carmageddon on the nation's roads as we all rush out to the Easter getaways. Look at those wonderful privately owned cars. Nice. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello, very good day to you. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Another unsettled day ahead with some heavy rain and some strong winds too, because we are still under the influence of low pressure like we have been through much of this week. So a blustery and showery theme for many of us. The strongest winds today will be across the south coast. The heaviest rain likely to be across eastern parts of Northern Ireland. We do have a couple of warnings out. The showery rain, as it pushes its way northwards across much of England and Wales, brings the risk of some hail and some thunder. Meanwhile, across parts of Scotland, we could see some sleet and snow over the higher ground. Temperatures will be around or a little bit below average for the time of year, but feeling noticeably colder in those strong winds. More showery rain to come as we go through this evening, all of it pushing its way northwards, and there will be something a little bit drier and perhaps clearer for a time developing as we go through the early hours of Good Friday. Could allow for a touch of frost and a few patches of fog to develop, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, but most places are going to hold up a few degrees above freezing. Otherwise, as we go through Good Friday, and again, it is going to be a blustery start and some showers developing as we go through the day. Some of them could once more be heavy with some further hail and thunder mixed in, but there should be some drier or perhaps even brighter spells in between the showers, and temperatures are actually going to be up a few degrees compared to today, and with that the winds will be easing too, so it should feel a little more pleasant. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. It's 11:50 on Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News, with me, Ben Leo, in for Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So the King has said that it is with great sadness that he can't attend the Royal Maundy service today at Worcester Cathedral.
Yes, and in a pre-recorded message played out at the service, he reaffirmed his coronation pledge, quote, not to be served, but to serve. Sounds very Harry and Meghan. He also said how Jesus has set an example for us to take care of each other.
And he also goes on to say how we need and benefit greatly from those who extend the hand of friendship to us, especially in the time of need.
Yeah.
I think he looks quite frail there, actually. I think he looks more frail than we've been used to seeing him there. Obviously, he can't attend the service today. Queen Camilla is there. We would just like to send GB News his best wishes to the whole family to get well.
Yeah, I do feel, I would say, I do feel very sad about the current situation with the royal family. I'm not a huge monarchist, but do you know what? It's one of the only last remaining pieces of class and tradition
I am now.
that identifies our great country.
Quite.
You know, and if and when they're gone, which I think there maybe is some sort of agenda to do, it'll be a very sad day. Let's go to
Carmageddon. 18.5 million drivers are expected to take to the road this weekend as the Easter holidays begin.
Yeah, and as mentioned, Jack Carson's on the ground live from Spaghetti Junction. Jack, what's going on?
Yeah, good afternoon to you, or good morning rather. We're here above the M6. You can probably see some of the congestion that's already been caused by a couple of accidents this morning going northbound towards Spaghetti Junction. That is going to make some of the traffic worse. Of course, we know over this Easter period, 14 million leisure journeys are expected to take place, 2 million just today. That increases to 2.6 million tomorrow. And the RAC also saying that 1 in 10 people still haven't really decided exactly when they're going to travel. So over the course of the next 4 days, there could be an extra 3.3 million journeys also taken. So those precautions, of course, to take before you make some kind of Easter travel, of course, to try and limit the likes of an accident, of course, very well recommended. But also what you've got as a combination, particularly if you're travelling today, is the end of the school holidays, which is also going to have that traffic, people trying to make an early getaway, particularly around airports when you've got that mix of business and also those families trying to make use of maybe cheaper flights before the official Easter period kicks in. On the trains over the next few days, you're going to have problems, particularly on the West Coast main line between London, Euston and Milton Keynes because of because of planned engineering works on the line there. So more people will be travelling on the roads because of issues on some of the parts of the network on the railway line. So yeah, be careful if you are travelling today and expect that congestion.
OK, Jack Carson from Spaghetti Junction, thanks very much. I would say maybe get public transport, but in light of events over the last 24 hours in London, maybe not, I would.
You can't. There's train works all weekend.
Oh, really?
Yeah, our whole family are going up to Chester this weekend. We all wanted to take the train rather than clogging up the roads, and all the trains are cancelled.
Right.
Broken Britain. Right, that is it from Britain's Newsroom for today. Thank you, Ben. It's been lovely. Up next, Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Emily. Have a wonderful Easter week.
Happy Easter.
Well, should Angela Rayner publish her tax affairs? She's so far refused to do so. But would publishing them, you know, show that she's innocent? Why not? She's asked Tories to reveal their tax affairs in the past.
But also the manhunt continues for the machete-wielding stabber on London's public transport. We'll be across the capital to see if anyone has spotted him and report from the scenes of the crimes. Well, that's all to come, so stick with us for Good Afternoon Britain.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good day to you. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Another unsettled day ahead with some heavy rain and some strong winds too, because we are still under the influence of low pressure like we have been through much of this week. So a blustery and showery theme for many of us. The strongest winds today will be across the south coast. The heaviest rain likely to be across eastern parts of Northern Ireland. We do have a couple of warnings out. The showery rain, as it pushes its way northwards across much of England and Wales, brings the risk of some hail and some thunder. Meanwhile, across parts of Scotland, we could see some sleet and snow over the higher ground. Temperatures will be around or a little bit below average for the time of year, but feeling noticeably colder in those strong winds. More showery rain to come as we go through this evening, all of it pushing its way northwards, and there will be something a little bit drier and perhaps clearer for a time developing as we go through the early hours of Good Friday. Could allow for a touch of frost and a few patches of fog to develop, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, but most places are going to hold up a few degrees above freezing. Otherwise, as we go through Good Friday, and again, it is going to be a blustery start and some showers developing as we go through the day. Some of them could once more be heavy with some further hail and thunder mixed in, but there should be some drier or perhaps even brighter spells in between the showers, and temperatures are actually going to be up a few degrees compared to today, and with that, the winds will be easing too, so it should feel a little more pleasant. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Want to be a winner just like Phil?
Obviously, whoever wins it next is going to be
as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
Enter our massive spring giveaway. There's £12,345 in tax-free cash to give your finances a spring boost. We'll also send you on a shopping spree with £500 worth of vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. You'll also get a garden gadget package. You have to hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats, and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your